So in a root position triad, you have no choice. You double the root. In a first inversion triad, you have some choices. Okay? So in a first inversion triad, let's take C major in the first inversion. The first choice, the most thing you want is to double the soprano voice with an inner voice. Okay? And by the way, this is on page 131. If you want to take a look at this, because you've got 4 different choices for your doubling or first inversion triad. The first choice is to double the soprano voice with an inner voice. Okay, so either with the tenor voice or possibly with the alto voice, and you could maybe accomplish that like this way. When you've got the soprano voice doubled with the alto voice, obviously you're going to have an octave distance there. Right? Or they could be a unison, I guess, too. That's also possible. So that's your first choice. So if you've got a first inversion triad, your first choice is to try and double the soprano with an inner voice. Then your next choice is to try and double the bass with an inner voice. So the bass, since the bass is a third, you could have the tenor double the bass and then have these other notes up here. Or you could have the alto double the bass. Okay. So those are both possibilities. Then your next choice is to double the bass with the soprano. So again, you've got a third of the chord down here, and you could put voices this way. And finally, your last choice is to double the inner voices on the same note. Usually a unison, it could be an octave, but usually that's going to look something like this. And so the tenor and the alto are both on the middle C, both on the same note. And you've still got a third and a fifth. So those are your choices in order of preference. First choice is to double the soprano with an inner voice, with either alto or tenor. Second choice is to double the bass voice with an inner voice. Third choice is to double the bass with the soprano. And lastly, to double the inner voices. Okay. So your first inversion, you have choices. I know you all love choices. Maybe not. See, that's one of the comforts of harmony is like sometimes when it's so rule driven, like you have to do this, you have to do this. That can be comforting because you have to do that. So that there's no choices. It's like I've got to do this. But other times you want some freedom, right? So first inversion is when you have some freedom. And so when you're dealing with this, I think most of the time you can find a way of doubling the soprano with an inner voice. I'd probably say like 50-60% of the time. And then the next group of times you're going to go on to something like this. And then maybe this, and then finally, it's really rare that you're going to end up in this kind of situation. But it might happen. And it's a possible, you can still say, I'm right, because it's one possible. Now, when I say double the soprano with an inner voice, that can refer to any, so I've got the root and the soprano here, but it doesn't have to be the root and the soprano. It can be any part of the triad. It can be the root or the third or the fifth. Whatever is in the soprano, you want to try and double. So has everybody got this stuff down? Okay, so if, in other words, if I had a first inversion triad, but instead I had the fifth up there in the soprano, then I would still try and double it with an inner voice like that, and So I would still try and double that soprano with one of the inner voices. Or in this case, if I have the third in the soprano, then I'm back at that, the soprano doubles the bass voice, right? I'm back at that last choice. I just have no choice. I've already got, if I've got the third in the soprano and I'm in a first inversion triad, the third's in the bass, I'm already there. So that, for that, you're just going to have to fill in the inner voices. But the main emphasis, I would say, in first inversion is to try and double the soprano with either an inner or the bass voice. And then finally, you're going to end up over here, doubling something in the inner voice. Okay, so that's first inversion. Everybody okay with first inversion? Okay, then we'll go on to second inversion.